And so today we are going to talk about proving triangles congruent. Yeah. All right, so put your name, today's date on the paper. It is the 9th. Okay, and we're going to go through, and today we're going to talk about proving that triangles are congruent. Now, proofs are a lot like, think about if you were a lawyer. How many of you have ever seen Law and Order? Or like Law and Order SVU, my favorite one. Yeah. Okay. If you've ever watched those shows, a lawyer comes in and a lawyer says, hey, my client is innocent. Here's why my client's innocent. And they give you multiple reasons why their person couldn't have killed the other person, right? They're like, oh my gosh, they were at home and doing the laundry, whatever. They give all these reasons for why their person is innocent. We're doing the same thing in math. We come up with a sentence or a statement that we want to prove is true, and then we have to give reasons for why our statements are true. And we're going to always make sure that we have 3 pieces of information. You need 3 pieces of information to prove something is true. So for each one of our proofs, we're going to follow these steps right here. The first thing we are going to do in any picture or in any proof is we're going to show the given information. So if there are sides, we're going to mark them with tick marks. If there are angles, we're going to mark them with arc marks. That's going to be the first thing that I do. The second thing that I do is I'm going to show congruent parts that I notice. So maybe you see some vertical angles. Maybe you see a side like we just did in our warm-up. Any of those type of things we're going to mark in our picture. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to give the theorem that proves the triangles are congruent. So we're going to pick one of the theorems from our foldable to prove that the triangles are congruent. And then we're going to complete the proof from there. So here is how a proof works. On the left side, you have your statements. And so that is just your sentences for each proof. On the right, you give your reason or your evidence why your statement is true. And then when you're done, the final statement is what you're trying to prove. You will always be given some information, so somewhere to start with your picture, and you'll always be given what to prove, excuse me, which is always going to be the last thing in your proof, okay? So my first statement is always going to be the information that is given to me, every time. So my first statement for this problem is going to be that segment BC is congruent to DC and AC is congruent to EC. I'm literally going to copy it down for my first statement. All right, so take a sec, we're just going to copy it. BC is congruent to DC. AC is congruent to EC. So I literally just copied my first statement, and that is given to me. That's the reason it's just given to me. Now we're going to mark that in my picture. So are these sides or are these angles? That's given to me. Sides. So should I have a tick mark or should I have an arc mark? Tick mark. Okay. So we're going to mark BC and DC. So here's BC, DC. I'm going to put 1 tick mark on each one. The next one is AC and EC. What should I put on AC and EC? Okay, but how many? Why 2? Good, it's my second set. So on AC and EC, put 2 tick marks. Okay, now I need 3 pieces of information. I need 3 congruent symbols in order to go to my final statement. Right now I have 2, but I need 3 of them. So I need 1 more statement. I need 3 congruent symbols. All right, now my next statement I don't know, but I gave you the reason. or your explanation. My reason was vertical angles. Well, what are vertical angles? They make an X. Vertical angles are congruent. They're exactly the same. Where are your vertical angles in this picture? Which two angles are vertical in this picture? Which one? The ones by C. Very good. So if these are vertical, that means they are congruent. What can I mark in the picture to show that they're congruent? And how do I mark that? With an arc mark. So I'm going to put an arc mark here on the left and an arc mark on the right. Those are vertical angles. Now, I need to say the statement or the sentence that says this angle on the left is congruent to this angle on the right. So when I name an angle, I need to use 3 letters. I'm going to call this angle over here ACB. Angle ACB is congruent to. How would I name the angle on the other side in the same order? So I said ABC. What do I have to, or excuse me, ACB. What do I have to name it on the other side? Same order. ECD. Very good. Angle ECD. And there is my third congruent symbol. Once you have 3, you can go on to your final statement. Your final statement will always be the proof. Okay, so your first statement's the given, your last statement is the proof. Here's my last statement. Given, proof. Now, I have to decide, how do I know that these 2 triangles are congruent? So I'm going to look at my foldable here. Which theorem says these 2 triangles are congruent? Side angle side. Do we agree with Jaden? Yes or no? Show me with your thumbs. You agree or disagree? Do you have 2 sides with an angle right between? Yes. Good. So this is side, angle, side. So my final reason is literally side, angle, side. So your first statement is your given, your last statement is your proof, and then from there you just kind of fill in the blanks for each piece of information that makes sense. The more you do, the easier they will get. So I know right now you're kind of like, what? But the more we do, the better you're going to feel about it. All right, do I have questions on this first one? Let's try another one. All right. So I've got my statement, my reasons. Your first statement should always be what? Given. So I'm going to take my given information. I am literally going to copy it down. So just copy. So your first statement and your last statement should always be really easy in a proof. There you go. Your reason is it's given to you. Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Your first sentence should always be the easiest thing to write. That's all you have to do is copy. Okay. Now, we have to mark it, though, in the picture. So am I going to be marking sides or angles? Is this first one a side or an angle? A side. So what am I going to put on it to show that it's congruent? A tick mark or an arc mark? Tick mark. Okay, so JK and LK are congruent. JK, put a tick mark. LK, put a tick mark. Those 2 sides are congruent. And there is my first congruent symbol. Boom. Second one, JM is congruent to LM. Is that sides or angles? Which one? Sides or angles? Sides again. How many tick marks should I put on them this time? 2. It's my second one. So here's JM. Here's LM. All right. There's my second congruent symbol. So you should be circling your congruent symbols with me or highlighting them or something. All right, now I just need to know one more piece of information, just one more. What do you notice about these two triangles? Do they have anything in common? They have a shared side. Which side is the shared side? The middle one. How many tick marks then should I put on this middle one? 3. Okay. This is a shared side. All right. In math, we don't call it a shared side. We call it the reflexive property. It means the same thing. The reflexive property means you have a shared side. That's just like the mathy term for it. Okay, so my statement has to say this line here is congruent to this line here. It's congruent to itself. That's what the reflexive property is. So I'm going to say Km is congruent to what? If it's congruent to itself, what should I say? Km is congruent to? Same thing, Km. Literally, it's congruent to itself. It's a shared side. It's exactly the same. Km is congruent to Km. All right, so I have 3. Oh my God, this is so itchy. I have 3 congruent symbols. What is going to be my final statement now? Number 3, what goes for my final statement? Exactly. I literally take this prove and I just copy it right there. Triangle KJM is congruent to triangle KLM. Those two triangles, one on the left, one on the right, are congruent. And now the last part is I have to determine which theorem says that they're congruent. Which one of those right there tells me that these are congruent? Side, side, side. Exactly, because you are literally given all 3 sides. Side, side, side. Good. All right, so all a proof really is being able to say, here's a piece of information, here's how I know it. That's all proofs are. So your first and last sentence of a proof should always be the easiest. It's just the middle stuff you have to kind of figure out. But the first should always be given, the last should always be whatever your theorem is and your proof. All right. Number 3. I again have 2 triangles. What do you already notice before I even start anything? What do you already notice about these 2 triangles? They have a shared side. So I know I'm going to have to use that somewhere in my proof here. Good. All right, so my first statement says angle G is congruent to angle I and FH bisects angle GFI. What is my first reason? How do you know that information? Where else does it say that? It's given. So literally, do you notice how this was just copied right here? This is given. All right, so we're going to mark that in my picture. Now, this time it's angle G is congruent to angle I. What do I have to put on it to show that they are congruent? Am I talking about angles or sides this time? Angles. So am I going to put an arc mark? Very good. So at angle G and angle I, I'm going to put an arc mark. And there's my first congruent symbol, so I'm going to highlight it. Now the next thing says FH bisects GFI. So here's angle GFI. It is getting bisected. What does the word bisect mean? Cut in half. Okay, if I'm cutting something in half, if I'm cutting a really big angle in half, what does that mean about the two smaller pieces? They're the same, yes. Good. So here's that big angle here, GFI, GFI. I'm cutting it right in half. So which angle is going to be the same on both sides? Angle F right here. Yeah, these two are going to be the same. Good. Okay, so my second sentence says angle GFH, that's that angle F on top, is congruent to angle IFH, the one at the bottom. That's exactly what we just said. Those two angles are congruent. Why did I put 2 arc marks there instead of 1? It's the second pair of angles. Good. Okay, how did I know that those two were the same? Which word gave it away? Which definition of which word did we use? How did we know to cut in half? Bisect, yeah. So this right here is definition of the word bisect. That's how we knew to cut it in half. Okay, definition of bisect, it means it cut in half. There's my second congruent symbol. My third one is reflexive property, which means a shared side. Which side do they share? FH. Good. What should I put on FH? A tick mark. Okay. My statement has to say that that side is congruent to itself. So what should my statement be?
FH is congruent.
Exactly. FH is congruent to FH. There is my third congruent symbol. I've got 3. Now that I've got 3, I can go on to my final statement. What should my final statement be? The prove right here. Good. So triangle GFH is congruent to triangle IFH. Now I just need to figure out which theorem it is. So look at it. Gosh, this is so annoying today. Which theorem says those two triangles are congruent?
Angle, angle, side.
Angle, angle, side. Do we agree with Jaden? You sure? Okay, great. Just want to be sure you're sure. Angle, angle, side. Good. 2 angles and a side that is not in between them. Very nice. Questions on that one? Okay, let's flip it over to the back. All right. I actually think you guys can do this one, number 4. So I'm going to give you like 2 minutes here. I want you to mark your picture, and I want you to try filling out number 4. Give it a go, and we'll check and we'll see if we get the same answers. Okay, so take a few moments, mark your picture, mark everything you know in your picture, work your way through, and then we'll check your work in just a minute. All right. Does anybody, or do you need another minute or are we good? Does anybody want to come put their work under the board and show us what they did? And I'm feeling confident. No one, huh? All right. First statement, angle N and angle Q are right angles. What's your reason? Given. Very good. There's my first sentence. Which means in my photo or in my picture here, I should mark that in the picture. Where are you going to mark that? With what? The boxes. Good. Right angle, right angle. Okay. Number 2, triangle ONP, this one on top, and triangle PQO, this one at the bottom, are what kind of triangles? Yeah, they're right triangles because they have a right angle. Literally, the definition of a right triangle. Okay, number 3, I don't know this statement, but I know the reason. The reason is the reflexive property say. They share a side. Okay, which side do they share? Good. They share this side right here. So what would be my sentence? Yep, you can either do PO is congruent to PO, or you can write OP is congruent to OP. Doesn't matter. Good. All right, next one says NO is congruent to PQ. NO, put 2 tick marks, is congruent to PQ. How do you know that? How do you know that? They're both what? What? No, they're not obtuse. Nope. Try again. Okay, I'll give you a hint. Look up. Where else do you see the sentence? Oh, look at that. They just split it up for you. How do you know that? It's given. Really? Okay, now your last step is going to be what? My prove. Good. So take this prove, put it right here. Triangle ONP is congruent to triangle PQO. How do you know that? Which theorem are you going to use? Which one? Let me just go through each one. Is it side, side, side? No. Is it side, angle, side? No. Is it angle, side, angle? No. Is it angle, angle, side? No. Is it hypotenuse, leg? Yes. Which one's the hypotenuse in this picture? The shared side. Very good. This is your hypotenuse. Right, because it's across from the 90. So I've got a hypotenuse and I've got a leg. My reason is HL. Good, good. All right, we're going to jump down to 6 first, and then we'll go to 5. Okay. Do I have a question on that one? So what I'm hoping you're noticing is it's like a lot of the same things over and over and over again, right? And that's the good part about proofs is you're like, oh, it's like the same thing over and over again. If you've done one, you've done them all. Okay. All right, so let's jump down, like I said, to 6, and then we'll come back up and do 5. All right, so I've got 2 triangles here. In this one, do they have a shared side this time? In the last problem, do they have a shared side that overlaps each other? Nope. Do you have vertical angles that make an X? Do you have vertical angles? So if it was vertical angles, it should look kind of like a bow tie, something like that. Do you have that in your picture? No, that's not really an X. So I don't have vertical angles and I don't have a shared side this time. So I have to go just by what's given to me this time. All right. First one says angle W and angle Y are right angles. How do you know that? It's given. Good. There's my first statement. Okay, so we're going to draw that in our picture. What should I put on W and Y? The boxes. Okay. Now, I don't know my second statement, but I know the reason is the definition of a right triangle. This triangle and this triangle are what kind of triangles then? Right triangles, exactly. So that's what I'm going to write. I'm going to write, so I'm going to have to write it kind of small. Triangle WVX and triangle YZX are right triangles. So essentially the one on the left is a right triangle, the one on the right is a right triangle, and we know that because they have a right angle. Okay, there's nothing to mark in the picture for that one. Number 3, Vx is congruent to Zx and X is the midpoint of Wy. How do you know that? It is also given to me. So they broke it up this time. All right, but now we want to mark that in the picture. Vx is congruent to Zx. What should I put on those? A tick mark or an arc mark? Tick mark. Why? Because it's a side. All right, so here's Vx. I'm going to put one tick mark. Here's Zx. I'll put another tick mark. Now, it says X is the midpoint of Wy. What does midpoint mean? In the middle. So if X is in the middle of this whole segment, what does that mean about these two pieces? Yes, right here, these two pieces have to be because X is in the middle. It's the midpoint. So my sentence is going to be Wx is congruent to Yx. And we knew that because of definition of midpoint. The word midpoint gave that away to me. All right. Now I've got all the information I need. What goes as my final statement? The proof. So I'm going to say triangle VWX is congruent to triangle ZYX. Which theorem says that? Well, I don't know if I agree with that. Why don't I agree with side angle side? Well, no, it was a good guess, but it can't be side angle side because this angle does not touch both of the sides. You have a right angle. Are you given the hypotenuse? Yeah, it's right across from the 90. There's your hypotenuse. There's your other hypotenuse. So you've got your hypotenuses, you've got two sides, and it's a right triangle. So my answer is HL, hypotenuse leg. All right, let's try to hustle through number 5 quickly so we don't have anything else to do tonight for homework. Okay, number 5. Now, already, what do you notice about these two triangles? Shared side. So I'm already going to know somewhere I have to have a shared side reason. Okay. First statement right here. What do these two symbols mean?
Parallel.
Parallel. Very good. These mean parallel. Okay, so my first statement is ST is parallel to RU. What is my reason? Given. Now, I'm going to mark that in my picture. Does anybody remember how to mark two lines as parallel in a picture? Not quite. It's an arrow, yeah. So ST, RU, I'm going to put an arrow on them to show that they're parallel. Now, if you remember, parallel lines cut by a transversal, so this is kind of coming back to you. Different angles have different relationships. So this angle right here, angle 3, is alternate interior to which angle? If you're looking at these numbers here. Alternate interior. Which one of those numbers is alternate interior? Number 6. So in my picture, that would be this angle R right here. Alternate interior angles are congruent. So I'm going to say this angle T is congruent to this angle R. And I'm going to call it using 3 letters. STR is congruent to angle URT. So if lines are parallel, alternate interior angles are congruent. There's my first pair of angles. My next statement says SR is parallel to TU. How do you know that? It's given to you again. Good. Now I'm going to mark those 2 lines as parallel. SR, TU. Instead of using 1 arrow, I'm going to use 2 arrows. Okay, now it's the same thing. Angle SRT, this angle right here, put 2 arc marks, is congruent to angle UTR, this one over here. What kind of angles are those? So if I turn my paper this way, these 2 angles are what kind of angles? Are they interior or exterior? Interior. Are they on the same side or alternate sides? Alternate sides. So it's the exact same sentence as right here. If lines are parallel, alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, there's my second congruent symbol. My third one is the one that you told me at the very beginning. What do they have in common? What do they share? They share a side. Which side do they share? RT, right here. RT, see in a little bit, is congruent to RT. Now, what is that called? What's the reason for that? Yep, reflexive property. It means it has a shared side. That's just the fancy way of saying a shared side. But we use the official term when we write it down. So reflexive property. Okay, now I've got my 3 congruent symbols marked. What is my final step? The prove. SRT is congruent to triangle UTR. And the final thing is I have to determine which theorem it is. What is tough? Which one is it? Is it side, side, side? No. Is it side, angle, side? Is it angle, side, angle? 2 angles with a side in between it. Answer's not on my face, it's up there. Do you have 2 angles with a side in between it? Yes, you do. So your final answer is angle, side angle. All right, keep that paper. That will be gold for you. Put it right into your notebook. Tomorrow we're going to do more proofs. You do not have homework tonight unless you did not finish your riddle or cut and paste from Friday. If you did not finish that, you must submit it by tonight. Okay? Have a lovely day, my dears. I shall see you tomorrow.